Hey there and welcome back to my channel. I'm Viv and today I'm going to show you how to do some shamrocks. Now it's getting close to St. Patrick's Day, so of course we got to paint some shamrocks, people. I mean, it's just like, aren't we all Irish on St. Patrick's Day? I think we are. And also, while we're painting these shamrocks, I'm going to show you how to do the negative painting technique. A lot of people get confused about it. It's not that hard, so I'm going to show you step by step so you get a little bit of learning in this one. Y'all need to learn something. Okay, so come on, let's go paint some shamrocks. So I've got a 5x7 140-pound piece of cold pressed watercolor paper, and I've taped it to my surface. I usually tape it to a board or to a piece of foam core, but I'm just going to tape it to this surface. The first thing I'm going to do is wet the surface, the whole entire surface, with some clean water. But I'm going to avoid, I don't know if you can see it, but I have flowers here. I have clover with some flowers, so I'm going to avoid those flowers. So maybe what I'll do is I'll paint around those with the water first, so that I don't have to get so close to them with my big brush, because I want those to remain as white as possible. So instead of painting the flowers, we're going to do negative painting and paint around the flowers. And that's all negative painting is. It's when you paint around a subject instead of painting the actual subject onto your paper. So we're painting around it, and we're going to leave those little clover flowers, shamrock flowers, whatever you want to call them. We're going to leave those white. And I'm using a what number is that? What size is that? 6, 5? Can't even tell. You know I can't see. It says it's a 5. I don't know. But that's what we're using. And we're just going to paint around first. And I'm kind of painting it wet because it's going to have to stay wet while I paint the rest of the background. So I'm putting pretty much a lot of water. Is that like correct grammar? Pretty much a lot of? Oh well, just bear with me, people. We'll get there together, even with my poor grammar. I mean, I'm an artist. I'm not an English person. So I'm quickly trying to paint around all of these flowers because I want those to remain white. So I don't want those wet. I want those to remain white. So I'm painting around them instead of actually painting them. And that is what negative painting is, painting around your subject, painting the background to make your subject pop out. So now I am going to paint the rest of it with some clean water, still being careful not to get my flowers wet. Now that I have the whole thing wet, I am just going to put a little bit of green gold on my palette, and that's going to be our first layer. And I'm going to cover up everything except for the flowers. So we're just going to drop that in and let the water just blend it out over the surface. This nice green gold. As a matter of fact, I think I'm going to start adding in some other colors with this green gold. Let me go with some, let's see, a little bit of olive green. Let's put a little bit of olive in some spots. Yeah, I like that better. So we'll start dropping in olive as well, and maybe a little bit of sap green in some spots. Yeah, that looks good. Just remembering to try to paint around those flowers. We don't want too much paint to get on top of those flowers. And you can use a larger brush when you're doing this. It's okay. So we're going to paint this whole background with these 3 colors, and that is green gold, a little bit of olive green, and a little bit of sap green. And we are painting around the flowers. And that's all negative painting is, just painting around the flowers. We're painting over everything else for right now. And once we get this done, we're going to let it dry. We're going to let this first layer dry completely. And we're halfway there. Now, through the magic of YouTube, we have completely dried this. We finished painting the green, so it's just a really nice mottled green background. Now I think I'm going to get a bigger brush, a larger brush to work with, so that this might go just a teeny tiny bit faster. So I'm going to switch to my number 12 round. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick out the shamrocks that I want to be sort of on top. And here is a trick that I did when I was first learning how to do negative painting. The ones I wanted to stay light, I would put a tiny little 1 on them, just so that I would know to paint around those. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to wet around the shamrocks that I want to stay lighter. And I'm going to do this in sections just to make it, let me see, where is my 1? That's a 1. Hold on, I've painted a 1 that I didn't want to paint. So I'm going to sort of paint that's around the shamrocks that I want to remain light, so that they look like they're coming forward. And this time I'm even going to probably add just a little bit of blue into the mix, into the background color. So I'm just getting a little bit of cobalt. I'm just dropping it in that background and being careful to paint around my shamrock that I want to be the lightest. And add a little bit more green. Oh, that might be a little much, so I'm going to take my brush and pick some of that up. Maybe a little bit more blue in there. And I'm going to continue working around, and I'm going to be adding a little bit darker green. Mixing it with that blue. You can do a little bit more of the olive green as well, if you'd like. A little blue into that olive green. And you're just painting around the objects that you want to be in the front, that looks like it's in the front of the composition. It's coming towards you. It's in the foreground. So you're painting around those. And leaving those dry. I'm just going to clean up the edge here a little bit. And you're wetting the area as you go. This one got a little bit too, it went all over my little number 1, so I'm just going to keep wetting it as we go. Working our way around. The ones that we want in the foreground. And that's the ones we want, the flowers in the foreground, and we want 1, 2, these 3 in the foreground. Everything else we're going to paint over. And we're just going to add some different greens, some different blues. As we go, just drop them in there. Gives a little bit more interest. Darkens up some of those areas. Okay, so I'm going to work on this, and I will be back as soon as I finish this background to show you what we have. Now, through the magic of YouTube, we have dried that. I finished that layer, and now you can start to see the shamrocks coming forward. So those were our number ones. Actually, if you really want to be technical, the blossoms are the number ones. These were number twos, but the blossoms, since they're the white of the paper, I'm not even counting those. So now I want to see which ones do I want to be number two. So I think this one is going to be a number two. And again, this is just a trick I did to learn how to do this. But you don't have to do this. This is just how, when I started to do it, I learned that if I numbered them, that it would be easier for me to work on them. So now I want to paint everything except for the flowers, the ones, and the twos. So it's getting to be a smaller and smaller area. So what I'm going to do is go in here, and I'm going to start right here again, because I need to clean this one up. It got a little bit lost in the shuffle. So I'm going to clean this up, this little area here, and sharpen it up. And now I'm using a lot less water. Like, I'm not doing the total wet on wet technique, because I'm working in a smaller area. It needs a little more green. You hear my little dove. He's cheering us on. He's our little art critic. He is a sweet little dove. I've had him for a few years now. And he is wonderful. He is just the sweetest little studio pet. So I think I'm going to work around this. Well, let's go this way, because this is a number two here. So I'm going to paint around it. And again, this time I'm using a lot less of the wet on wet, because I'm working in a smaller area. So I don't really need as much water. I'll add a little bit more of that green gold right there, just to punch it up just a little bit. That green gold is some strong color. Add a little sap green. You can add it in some other places. And now you can start to see the next set of the shamrocks coming through. And we're just being really careful not to get hard edges. So we're kind of keeping the area that we're working in wet as we go. Adding some blues and greens as we go. We want it to have a nice variation. Just being careful around those edges. I wonder how it would look if we added a little bit of purple. That might be too, that might make it look gray. Let's not do that, because I just thought this bright yellow with that purple, it'll make it gray. That's not the look I'm going for. So no, that's a no. So we're going to paint around everything that is labeled either that's white or either is a 1 or a 2. Now I'm going to finish up this layer and we'll be back in a second. Okay, through the magic of video, I have finished the next layer. So now I just have a few which you can't see. I made my marks, just a tip. When I'm doing this, when I'm practicing this, I make my marks on my paper a little bit darker than I normally would so that I can actually see where to paint. So the next layer we're going to do is going to be just around these the ones that are really in the background, and we're going to use a little more paint just to really push those back. So let's get started on that. So what I think I'm going to change to a little bit smaller brush. Let me look here for this next part. Because I'm going to be going around a lot smaller areas. So I think I want some of the blue I've been using. I'm going to mix it with just a little bit of the sap green. I want this layer to be a little darker. So I'm going to mix it up like maybe cream. And I'm going to start here at the bottom with another layer. And I like to start here because it's such a small area. I can get it painted quickly without any hard edges. And I might even introduce maybe a little bit of Hooker's Green. Let's put some Hooker's Green over here, just in case I want to introduce that as well. Or some Pyroline Green. Let's see what we got here. A little Pyroline Green too. Let me put that like right in the little edge here. Because I want this to get really dark, because this is the very background. So it should go way far into the background. This little area, we can just paint it like it is. I'm going to lift some of that water up. I've got a little puddle going on there and I don't like it. I may even drop some blue in there in some areas, just to give it some variation. In this little area too. I'm going to work on this little area. Now if I wanted to push this clover back into the background more, I would just paint right over it, but I don't, not this time. In these little areas, now these are tricky. Got a little too, I got a puddle there, so I'm going to pull some of that up. I'll just get into this area here, right in the center. I think I'm going to drop a little blue into that. So when you're doing this negative painting technique, the thing is you're just painting it in layers, and you're painting the background. You're painting around your subject. You're not painting your actual subject. So you're painting the background around it. Whereas when you are doing positive painting, you are painting the actual subject onto the paper. Here we are painting around the subject to make it show up. We're painting around these shamrocks. And a trick that I learned, like I said, is to number them as I go, so that I will know which ones to paint over and which ones to leave dry. And of course, we're going in layers. And the lighter layers will look like they are coming toward you. And of course the darker layers, I'm just going to add a little bit of darkness right there. The darker it is, the further back in the composition or in the background it goes. So, got a little bit too much on my little shamrock there. We don't like that. Choo choo choo. Choo 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 choo. I'm trying to clean up some of these edges because I do have a little bit of a jiggity jaggedy edge on some of these. So I'm just trying to use my paintbrush to also clean up some of those edges as we go. Now there's another shamrock right here, so I'm going to paint around it. It is really far in the background. So it is really dark. Just get a little water to sort of blend this. There we go. And we are being serenaded by the handsome Mr. Gray. My little bird's name is Dorian Gray, and he is serenading us as we paint. There we go. And we're just going to keep right on painting into this background, varying the colors, adding a little blue here and there, trying to clean up the edges of these dry shamrocks, or clover, whatever you want to call them. And every time we do this, it is making this really sort of stand out, making our composition sort of stand out. And you can barely see it, but there's some clover back here too, so I'm painting around those. Right here in the center. And there's one here, so I'm going to paint around it. And paint right around it. I'll add a little blue in here. And this is coming out really well. It's a lot better than I expected. I'm really, really proud of it. Now I'm going to let this dry, and we're going to work on these flowers some. Now we're going to do some positive painting onto the flowers to make them look a little bit more realistic. So let's let this dry. Ooh, look how dark that is. Let's make some other areas dark like that in the center. Let's add some of that blue so that it's not just in one spot, or else your eye will just stop there, and we don't want that. So I'm going to pull that blue throughout the composition in some areas. And since it's still wet, it's letting me do that without much problem. So that looks better than just to have that one little blue. You can also just sort of lighten it up by lifting it with your damp dry brush. All right, so now let's let this dry, and then we're going to work on the flowers. So we've let this dry now, and for the flowers, I'm going to mix up sort of a blue greenish gray. And this is just a little bit of Payne's gray, and it looks a little bluish, so add a little water to it. I want it to be really watery. And I'm just going to paint inside of this. Just put a little shadow here. And a little shadow on the little tube here. And right in the center, I may put just a dot, a tiny dot. It's right there. A tiny dot of that darker color. I'm just going to ease. I'm just sort of softening up this edge. It's a little too hard. Yeah. We're going to do the same thing with this one. We're just going to start in the center. And just add a little shadows. All right, we're going to let that dry, and then while that's drying, let's add a few shadows here. Let's go ahead and make a little shadow across. Oops, got this a little too dark. And just blend it out. We just want to have this a little bit darker. Now these are the number ones that we've painted. They were both the same exact wash. So now I'm just going to make them look a little bit more separated from each other. All I'm doing is I'm just putting a little bit of the green right up to the edge and then blending it out with my brush. And that pulls that front one even further into the foreground while it's pushing this one into the background. And you can do that on this one too. You can go ahead and make this one a little bit darker around it. So that they have a little better separation here as well. And just blend it out with the tip of the brush. It doesn't have to be perfect. And you can continue to do that. You can darken up around this area if you want. You can even make more shamrocks in the background if you want. It's really up to you. Now the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to clean up these edges of these flowers because they're a little bit jiggity jaggy. So I'm just going to take my bristle brush and I'm just going to go along the edges just to clean them up just a little bit. And soften those up. And that just softens those edges. And if I want to come back and add a little bit more of that shadow color, I can. And my little buddy's over there just cheering us on. I think he approves. There, I like that. I like that. I am going to add a little bit of shadow back to some of it. Even while it's still wet, I'm just going to come back and just wearing the centers of them. I want them to have that little center area for sure. There we go. I'm just sort of tapping some water around it. Oop, I still want this to be in shadow because that one's on top. A little more shadow on this one. All right, there you go. Some negative painting shamrocks. And I think we did a good job. Now, if you like this video, give me a thumbs up and please consider to subscribing to my channel. Now I have a floral workshop that's going to start on March the 21st. I'm going to be doing for 5 days. It's a 5-day and it's free workshop, floral workshop. I'll leave the link below to sign up. You'll sign up every day. You'll get a new floral tutorial in your inbox, totally free. And we're going to do 5 days of flowers. So I would love for you to join me for my workshop. Again, the link will be below. Give me a thumbs up and consider subscribing. Until next time, I will see you and happy painting.